They say life has a way of testing the patience of those who walk quietly, of those who carry themselves with dignity while the world underestimates them. There are men who have walked through storms not of their making, men who have been told over and over again that they are not enough, not good enough, not wealthy enough, not worthy enough, and yet they carry on, they endure, because deep inside them lies a fire that insults cannot quench, and on this particular afternoon that fire burned. Inside a man named Daniels, a man who had known the bitter taste of being dismissed long before he ever set foot in that dealership. Daniels had grown up in a neighborhood where opportunity was scarce, where every day felt like a battle for dignity. He had watched his mother stretch meals across 3 days, he had seen his father's pride wounded by doors that slammed shut before he could step inside, and from a young age Daniels had learned that the world did not hand respect to men who looked like him, men had to carve it out with their bare hands. He worked his way through school not with privilege but with sweat, studying under flickering street lights when the power went out, taking jobs no one wanted just to keep food on the table, and when classmates mocked him for his clothes or teachers overlooked his hand raised in class, he learned to stay quiet, to let the sting pass, to let patience become his shield, because deep down he knew a truth that many forget: storms pass but dignity endures. Years later when Daniels entered the world of business he carried that same patience, but patience did not mean weakness, it meant strategy, it meant knowing when to move, when to wait, and when to strike. He invested slowly, carefully, choosing industries others ignored, small auto shops on the edge of town, repair garages dismissed as worthless. Yet he saw potential, he saw what others missed, he turned losses into profits, debts into growth, and step by step he built a reputation not loud, not flashy, but solid, his name whispered with respect in circles that mattered, until finally he had the means to take on something bigger, something that would cement his place, and that was why on this afternoon he walked into a dealership with calm eyes and simple clothes, for he had just purchased the majority shares of the very business that stood before him, but the ink on the deal was fresh, the staff had not all been told, and that gap of ignorance was about to reveal the ugliness of arrogance. The salesman stood near the entrance, polished shoes reflecting the pavement, tie pulled tight, hair slick with gel, a man who believed his worth was measured by the gleam of his watch and the shine of his smile, but his smile was not warm, it was the kind that curved downward at the edges, the kind that judged and mocked in the same breath. He believed he was the gatekeeper of luxury, that he could decide who was fit to sit behind the wheel of a car worth more than most people's homes, and when he saw Daniels step onto the lot his decision was instant. He looked at Daniels, saw the plain shirt, the shoes that were scuffed from real work, the skin that reminded him of every stereotype he secretly carried, and he smirked. He did not see a customer, he saw an inconvenience, someone he thought would waste his time, and so before Daniels could even open his mouth, the salesman raised his hand, gesturing toward the far end of the lot where the older cars sat, the ones with faded paint and high mileage, and said in a voice dripping with arrogance, "Hey buddy, the used cars are that way, the luxury models aren't really in your range." And he chuckled as though he had told a clever joke, as though Daniels should be grateful for the advice. The words cut through the air, sharp, poisonous. Customers nearby shifted awkwardly, some glanced at Daniels with sympathy, others pretended not to hear. Daniels stood silently, looking at the SUV before him, a sleek black machine polished to perfection, and then he turned to the salesman, his face calm, his eyes steady, and in a voice quiet enough to unsettle he said only, "Noted," pulling out his phone, dialing a number, speaking softly into the receiver, while the salesman rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath. The salesman laughed to himself, shaking his head, thinking, some people just don't know their place. He turned away, already scanning the lot for another customer, someone who looked the part, someone he believed deserved his attention, blind to the storm building right in front of him. Because patience is not weakness, silence is not surrender. Sometimes the most powerful answer is to say nothing, to let arrogance dig its own grave. And Daniels had lived a lifetime of letting insults pass over him, but justice has a way of arriving at the perfect time. Minutes later the glass doors of the dealership burst open, not with the slow swing of a customer but with the urgency of men on a mission. The manager hurried out, his face pale, his tie loosened. Behind him 2 lawyers in dark suits walked briskly, a woman with a briefcase followed, their steps sharp, their eyes searching, and when they spotted Daniels they headed straight for him, ignoring the salesman entirely. "Mr. Daniels," the manager exclaimed, his voice trembling with a mixture of relief and fear, grabbing Daniels' hands with both of his, shaking them firmly, "We are honored, congratulations on finalizing the deal this morning, welcome to your new dealership." The salesman froze, his smirk collapsing, his face draining of color. The man he had mocked, dismissed, humiliated, was not just a customer, he was the new owner, the majority investor, the man who held the future of the entire dealership in his hands. Daniels turned slowly, his eyes locking onto the salesman's, his voice calm but heavy with meaning. "Funny thing about ambition," he said, each word deliberate, each syllable cutting deeper than a blade. "Sometimes it buys the whole lot." The salesman's mouth opened but no words came, his arrogance shattered, his power dissolved, his smugness turned to shame, and the silence that followed was louder than any scream. The narrator's voice rose, reminding all who listened. And in that moment the tables turned. The man who had been dismissed now owned everything. The salesman who thought he had power learned that disrespect is the fastest road to disgrace. Never judge a book by its cover, because the story you laugh at today may be the one you must answer to tomorrow. But justice rarely stops with one lesson. It lingers, it tests, it digs deeper, and inside the office where the contracts waited, Daniels sat at the desk, flipping through the papers. At first his calm smile remained, but as his eyes scanned the fine print it began to fade. Line after line revealed hidden traps, fees buried in paragraphs, clauses written to bind him, betrayals etched into the ink. His lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. The manager shifted nervously, his confidence dripping away with each bead of sweat. Daniels leaned back, his hand gripping the pen tightly, his mind racing not with panic but with calculation. He had seen this before. He had walked into rooms where men in suits smiled as they slid papers across the table, papers designed to strip him of power, to bind him to losses. But Daniels was not a fool. He had built his empire brick by brick. He had survived betrayals far deeper than this, and he would not be tricked. Not now, not here, not ever. Outside, the salesman watched through the glass, his stomach twisted, his earlier insults now heavy chains around his neck, the irony suffocating. He had mocked the man who now decided his fate. He had laughed at the man who now held his future, and he felt dread gnaw at him like fire. Inside, Daniels set down the papers slowly, his eyes narrowing at the betrayal before him, his voice low but firm as he spoke to his lawyers. "They think they can outsmart me, they think they can cheat me even as they sell, but they forget one thing: I don't lose." The words hung in the air like thunder, his patience now transformed into resolve. He leaned back, his lawyers whispering in his ear, pointing at clauses, explaining the dangers, and the manager fidgeted in silence, sweat clinging to his brow. Daniels placed the pen on the desk slowly, his voice steady but sharp. "Do you think I came this far without learning to read between lines? Do you think after everything I have survived, paper tricks will break me?" His words rolled heavy, filling the room with tension. The salesman hovered at the doorway, curiosity battling fear. He could sense the storm building, his arrogance long gone, replaced with a dread he could not shake. He had insulted the wrong man, and now he was about to witness something far greater than humiliation. He was about to witness justice in motion. Daniels did not shout, he did not pound the table, he simply smiled, the kind of smile that unsettles because it hides strategy. "Gentlemen," he said to his lawyers, "prepare an amendment. If they want to play games, then let's change the rules." And with that one line the power shifted again. The narrator's voice deepened. "Because true strength is not shown when life is easy, it is revealed when betrayal stares you in the face, and those who survive betrayal do not survive by chance, they survive by wisdom." Daniels called in the senior staff, the managers, the employees, gathered them into the room, their eyes wide with curiosity, their hearts pounding with fear, and he stood before them not as a victim but as a leader. "I know what has been written in these papers," he said. "I know the tricks designed to bind me, but I also know this: no paper can stop a man who refuses to bow. This dealership belongs to me now. Not because ink says so, but because I earned it, and I will protect every worker. Hear from the greed of those who would treat you like pawns." The room stirred, whispers rose. Employees who had long felt the sting of disrespect, who had worked under owners that valued profit over people, now looked at Daniels with new eyes, respect flooding the silence, and in that moment loyalty began to shift. The former owners, furious at his defiance, stormed in with their lawyers, shouting threats, pointing fingers, waving documents, but Daniels met them with calm steel. "You thought you sold me a trap," he said, "but what you really sold me was evidence, evidence of greed, evidence of fraud, and when I expose this, it will not be me in court, it will be you." The weight of his words cracked the arrogance in their faces, and they faltered. The salesman shrank into the corner, shame burning his skin. He remembered his words: "The luxury models aren't really in your range," and the irony nearly crushed him because now it was his own job, his own future, that was out of range. Daniels signed the papers only after the amendments were made, tearing out the clause, burning the traps, sealing the deal on his own terms, and when the ink dried the dealership truly belonged to him, clean, complete, uncontested. He turned to the salesman at last, his voice calm but final. "You had one job, to treat customers with respect, and you failed. You didn't just disrespect me, you disrespected every man and woman who ever walked onto this lot. Today I give you the same thing you gave me: dismissal." and with a simple nod the salesman was escorted out, his arrogance crumbling into dust behind him. The narrator's voice lifted with power, and so justice was served. The man who was mocked stood taller than ever, the men who tried to cheat him were caught in their own trap, and the salesman who thought himself mighty learned the cost of disrespect. The lesson was clear: never measure a person by the surface of their life, because beneath the quiet smile of the underestimated may lie a strength greater than you can imagine. Daniels walked the lot that evening, the cars gleaming beneath the fading sun, employees standing straighter, hope glimmering in their eyes, and for the first time in years the dealership felt alive with possibility. His journey had been long, filled with storms and betrayals, but he had endured, and now his patience had blossomed into victory. And as the narrator's voice slowed, heavy with emotion, it left one final truth to echo: respect is not about the size of your wallet or the shine of your shoes. Respect is the currency of humanity, and those who spend it freely will never be poor, while those who hoard it in arrogance will always end in disgrace. Justice had been served, the tables had turned, and the story of Daniels was complete.